Pesticides and their intended effects. A pesticide is any agent that is used to protect produce from anything that could cause harm, such as insects, weeds, or infections. There are different classes based on what they prevent. Insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, rodenticides, molluscicides, and nematicides are all different classes. Pesticides reduce loss of crops and increase total crop yield and quality. Let's talk about the research behind pesticides. There are three different time periods of pesticide usage. The first one, before 1870, includes the usage of natural compounds. Between 1870 and 1945, the second time period, inorganic synthetic materials were introduced. The third time period, post-1945, modern synthetic pesticides such as DDT, BHC, and Algin were introduced. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring was released to raise awareness of harmful effects of pesticides, which led to the banning of DDT. A new family of pesticides was introduced. This new family was not as harmful to the environment. There's currently a screening of 500,000 different compounds to find effective pesticides. Once a potential new pesticide is identified, it must be developed and registered, which can cost as much as $250 million.
One example of unintended effects of pesticides includes parasite and host interactions, specifically immunosuppression. Exposure to these chemicals can compromise the immune system of organisms like oysters and earthworms, which makes them more vulnerable to infections and increases disease rates. Pesticides can also affect predator and prey relationships. When prey species are removed, it changes how predators behave. When herbicides are used, they reduce plant cover. This means there's less food available for insects and small mammals, and as a result, it can disrupt the entire food web and affect many animals.
Pesticides can affect a variety of populations, some of them including farm animals, aquatic biota and local water sources, as well as pollinators of areas with pesticide remnants. An example of effects of pesticide on a population would be fish. When pesticide intake is happening, it causes neurotoxicity, altered metabolism, developmental toxicity, as well as endocrine disruption, which can lead to altered behavior as well as mass deaths. As for vertebrates, in addition, they can cause weight loss, impaired development, and reduced reproduction and hatching success. The effects of pesticides are so large that they reach to the community and the ecosystems. Some examples of the communities and ecosystems that are affected include soil ecosystems, aquatic biota, as well as pollinator species. In communities, decline of natural enemies and predators, as well as changes in food sources happens, while in ecosystems, decreasing habitat heterogeneity as well as affected ecosystem functioning happens.
Global changes are reshaping how pesticides behave in the environment. The distribution and biotransformation of pesticides intensify the effects caused by global changes. Some of these changes may be climate variability, increasing temperatures, and differences in participation patterns. This would mean that where pesticides are found and how they move through ecosystems are to become more unpredictable. This could lead to a greater presence of pesticides in the environment, which could create even greater toxicity to the environment. This leads to more intense effects on ecosystems and the health of organisms within. Pesticides have the ability to disrupt hormonal systems, impact reproduction, and even cause acute poisoning. These effects not only affect wildlife, but can also affect humans as well. Another thing to consider is how global changes apply selective pressure on populations, driving evolutionary changes by pushing species to evolve and adapt. Global change continues to reshape ecosystems. Therefore, it's crucial to understand and consider how pesticide behavior is altered by these changes and how this affects not only individual species but also entire ecosystems. The effects that global changes have on bumblebee workers is considerably alarming. While bumblebees are already affected by habitat loss, global changes can further intensify the selective pressure, making it harder for bumblebee colonies to survive. Changes in pesticide behavior, such as where pesticides are found and how they move through ecosystems, can increase the exposure of pesticides over longer periods of time, this causing more harmful impacts on the population health and the colony survival rates. The health of bumblebee workers is directly connected to the stability of ecosystems and the production of food. Bees are our pollinators and are crucial when it comes to crop production. This is just one example of many ways that indirect pesticide effects are impacting ecosystems.
Microevolution may eventually catch up to specific organisms with shorter generation times. For example, bacteria might benefit from the newer pesticide applications because they use it as a carbon source. Now, this may differ for other organisms that have a longer generation time, such as plants and animals, because the pesticides will actually affect them throughout this process. It all depends on where an organism is in its life cycle. Although we are moving from a older, more harmful generation of pesticides to a newer generation, they as well have their consequences on specific wildlife. This includes disrupting species interactions. Through climate change, we can see that it's distributing the pesticides across environments through rainfall patterns and rise in sea levels. This affects how pesticides move throughout the ecosystem and can have higher concentrations in certain areas. Climate change is also super harmful this process because it makes the metabolism of organisms faster, which makes them extremely vulnerable to pesticides. In order to combat this issue, we need to make sure that we're paying close attention to climate change, bringing awareness to it, and reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that are being